Right. Well, I think we're live, folks. I don't know if there's anybody out there, but if there is, would you like to just put a little post on the screen so I can see that something's actually happening? This is a new discipline to me completely, this Facebook thing. And I've got, oh, it looks as though there are people there. I can see 3. So I'm not alone. Good. Well, hi folks. Welcome to Imray's Live. I'm sitting in my study down here in the New Forest, and you're probably wondering what's going on, but I'm surrounded by wallpaper, which is actually a load of old charts that I found. Thanks, David Ashman. That's what we wanted to know. Brilliant. Loud and clear, says David. That's good. Okay. Well, I'm sitting in my study in the New Forest, and it's wallpapered with old charts that I found. Being a sailor, I wasn't going to go down to the shop and spring for new wallpaper, but I had a shed full of wonderful charts, and so that's what it is. You can just see the Royal Cruising Club Bird G there that saw me across the Atlantic many years ago. It's tattered and torn, but it's got a pride of place. I've got a smart one now that's up on the boat. Anyway, here we go. Shell Channel Pilot. This is the latest edition. Now, David, we've got communication. Can you tell me, when you look at this, is it right way round? Because when I look at it on my screen, all the writing's backwards. Is it all right when you look at it? Somebody tell me. Nothing. Ah. Rod. Is it right way round, the writing, Rod? This is the question. It's terribly amateur, all this. I love it. It's a complete lash-up. David Ashman says no. Does that mean it's wrong way round? Backwards specialism. Okay, there you go. It's interesting. Well, you'll have to look at it backwards then, guys, because there's nothing I can do about that. So that's what we're talking about. I thought I'd start off by giving you something about the history of the book and how it all came about. And then when we've done that, we'll throw it open and we can all have a chat about it. So here we go. I've put some photographs up on my computer screen, which I hope you're going to be able to see. The trick here is going to be me picking it up. And it doesn't work backwards, so I'll have to hold it up this way round. Well, we'll see. Right, here is Adlard Coles. Is he? Yeah, good, got him. Right, this chap started the Shell Channel Pilot in 1935 or thereabouts. He had it in mind to write a pilot book for the English side of the English Channel, which he did. And he went on to great things, did Adlard Coles. He became the founder and sole proprietor for a while of the great publishing house that publishes a lot of our textbooks now, and some good yarns too, and they're one of my publishers, and well, thanks very much, Adlard. He started the pilot book, and he was a smart guy because he got himself sponsorship straight away. There wasn't a lot of sponsorship around in the 30s, and especially not during World War II. But Adlard managed to crack some out of Shell Oil Company. In those days, they had a series of books it was for car touring, really, and I remember my dad had a copy back in the 50s, and it was they all had pictures on the cover of happy families sitting on check rugs looking out at wonderful scenes in the West Country and stuff. So the Shell pilot book went into that series of books. So it was published by a mainstream publisher, really, not a nautical publisher at all. And Adlard Coles kept the book for a while. He built it up, and it was really, by our standards, it was really primitive. Look at this. Here's, oh God, sorry about this, guys. Here's one of the plans from the book. It's really looks dead primitive to our eyes, and yet, you know, it was the best they had in those days, and they were glad of it. So that continued until the 1950s, and here's one of the books. Another backward book, guys. This is one of Adlard's books. This was the first pilot book I ever bought, and it's dated 1972. And I had it for, well, I've had it all my life, really. I don't like to say I still refer to it, but I don't, because I don't believe in out-of-date pilot books. People should buy a new one and keep up to date and keep pilot book publishers in business. But as time went on, Adlard got older, as we all must, and when he retired in the early 1980s, he had to find somebody to pass the book on to, and it was a bit of a problem for him because where do you find somebody to follow Adlard Coles? Well, he did. He found John Coote, Captain Johnny Coote, Royal Navy. He was the youngest submarine captain in the whole of the Royal Navy, Johnny Coote. He was a real swashbuckling man, a pirate. I've got a load of pictures to show you here, but I'm going to give up because it's hopeless, isn't it, offering this up to the screen. I'll just describe the man. He was a cheeky-looking bloke when he was a young fella, larger than life, and he did his submarining during World War II. On one occasion, he was a navigating officer on the submarine, and the navigating officer plied his trade in the skipper's toilet at the bottom of the conning tower. This is what he told me. And he said when it was action stations, he had to go in there, sit on the bog, and the door opened in two sections like a stable door. And the top section, bottom section, clanged shut on him so he couldn't get out. The top section went bang and came down on his lap. So he had a chart table, and that was it. And he had to go in there with all his charts and all his kit. Well, on this occasion, he forgot the stuff. And they were due to torpedo a vessel in Monaco harbour, in through the entrance. And Coote managed to navigate them there, and nobody really looked at what he was up to, but they got it, and they got the result they wanted. And the captain said, "How do you know how to get a torpedo in through here?" He said, "Oh, I was in here all the time in the 30s, lost my shirt up the hill there." So a great gambler. But his navigation technique was remarkable because on this occasion he had forgotten his dividers and his parallel rulers, and you know, really embarrassing. What are you going to do? The whole ship's company is relying on you. Well, he didn't panic. He grabbed the skipper's toilet roll off its holder, stuck it down on the chart, put it on the compass rose, and rolled it across to where he wanted to draw his line. He always had a pencil about his person, as a good navigator will, a 2B. And for dividers, he grabbed the skipper's toothbrush, offered it up to the side of the chart, and put his fingers on the scale he wanted, brought it out, and there you go. So this is the sort of navigator who was running the Shell Pilot in the 1980s after he took over from Adlard Coles. Yeah, he'd had an interesting career, which involved ocean racing with the great Max Aitken. This was before he had the pilot book, and in fact it was while he was still in the Navy. And Aitken said to him, "Look," he said, "look, Coote," he said, "there's no future in submarines. Why don't you come and work for me in Fleet Street?" Because his dad was Lord Beaverbrook, who was the chairman of Beaverbrook newspaper. Well, he owned Beaverbrook newspapers, which included the Daily Express. So Coote went along with it. A year later, they launched the first nuclear submarine. So it looked like not the greatest decision, but it actually worked out really well for him, because he became chief executive of Beaverbrook newspapers, and they had loads of fun. He set up the first boat show and all sorts of things. So this is the man who had it from 1982 to 1992, when after a lifetime of what some would consider to be excess, but I would consider to be seaman-like good fun, he decided that perhaps his days were numbered and he was going to have to pass it on. Well, Johnny Coote had been looking after me in my young years. He'd taken a bit of a shine to me, and for some reason, and was acting as a sort of mentor. And he came to me in 1992 and he said, "Look here, Cunliffe," he said, "you're going to have to take the pilot book on." He said, I can't do it anymore. It's going to have to be you." I said, "Well, I don't know about that, Johnny. I don't want the responsibility," because by then Johnny had raised it from just the Shell Channel Pilot to the south coast of England to include the north coast of France as well. We're still in the dumpy format, but he's expanded it a lot, which he thoroughly enjoyed because he liked a good meal out, Johnny. And when Shell was paying, he was all up for it. So I didn't really want to do it, but he sort of persuaded me, and he invited me to this meeting, which was going to take place at the Garrick Club in the West End of London, where all sorts of famous people are members. And I wasn't quite sure what it was we were doing there, but I turned up. I didn't have a suit, and I had to hire a suit from Burton's in Bond Street. And I got this suit, and the trousers were too short, so I went in with trousers at half-mast into this swanky club. It was really not good, really, but I turned up. Coote was very kind. He said, "Look, we better get you up to the bar as soon as we can. Get your feet under a table. Nobody will notice." So we went up to the bar, and as we were drinking champagne out of half-pint tumblers, the bar started to fill up. People started to come in. The first in was a lady from Shell Oil, who was there to tell us that they were finished. they weren't going to do it anymore. They weren't going to give us any more money. So that wasn't good news. The next one in was Willie Wilson, who at that time was the chief executive and director of Imray, Laurie, Norrie and Wilson. I was pleased to see Willie because I thought, oh, maybe we're going to get a real pilot book publisher. Maybe that's going to be more in my line. So Willie turned up, and Johnny Coote was there, and I was there. And I thought that was going to be it. But Johnny had forgotten to book a table. And so we had to sit at the club table. And these clubs, you go to the club table, you sit down with whoever comes. And we sat down with Ralph Hammond Innes and Kingsley Amis, those two great novelists. And of course they immediately buttoned in on the conversation and were telling us all what we had to do. But Johnny kept the drinks coming, and by the time it came to port time, which came out in large wine glasses brimming full, everyone was completely slaughtered. We didn't know what day it was anymore, but it didn't matter because the shell lady had slumped away in a corner and we weren't bothered about her anymore. She wasn't going to do it. And the rest of us had done a deal, and I was going to do the book and I was going to do it for Imray's. The only thing was that I had to rewrite the whole book. We couldn't have it as it was. It had to have nothing of the original in it. So, well, there we were. I used some of the photos. But we came up with the first edition that I did, and here it is. Backwards as always. This is the Shell Channel pilot. The first Imray edition came out in 1993, and when you look inside, you can see that it's moved on a bit from the Coote and Ablard days. We've got some. I can see you over there. We've got some coloured photos, but we've got a lot of black and whites left, and the plans weren't really in the same street as they're in now. The whole thing has moved on amazingly, and my wife and I took it on. I've got to show you this picture if I can find it quickly. There's a picture here of my wife and I. At the time we took over the pilot book. Here we are. You can see we're well tooled up for a party. My wife's looking beautiful as always, and well, there we were, pilot book writers in the vein of Johnny Coote. He'd be proud of us. And that was our boat. At that time we had a 35-ton pilot cutter with a 55-horse engine, which was a bit like putting an egg whisk on the back really, but she sailed like a witch because she'd been built to sail without an engine at all. So that was our tool, and with that we did the job. We visited every port in the Channel that we could get into, and those we couldn't, we found trusted friends who could, or we anchored outside and went in the dinghy, and we did the job. And we've been doing it ever since. We try to update the book every 3 or 4 years. We were meant to be doing it this year. It's not going to happen, I don't think, because we're all locked down and we're going to end up with not enough time. But there we are. So that's the end of what I've got to say. How's the time? We've got loads of time, haven't we? That's good. So let's have some questions. Who have we got? Yeah. Oh, hi. David Gore says, if you click going, you'll get a notification when it starts. Click on that and it'll connect you. Well, that's good. That's good to know. Maybe, but it didn't. Oh, well. We are connected and you can see me, so that's the main thing. Okay, so has anybody got any questions? Because I'm relying on you to keep the show on the road here, shipmates. I can't talk all afternoon. Nobody wants that, do they? It's not like a formal lecture where you can put proper slides on and look like a professional. Just bring it on. Let's hear from you. I've got my specs on so I can read what it says. Nigel Stinton says joining instructions are a bit vague. I don't know what he means by that. He's probably talking about the medium that we're using, and I couldn't agree more, Nigel. It's all a bit of a struggle, isn't it? Anyway, we're getting going. We haven't got any questions. Well, I've got a question. A pal of mine who knew I was going to do this sent me in a question, and he said something along these lines. How do French restaurateurs react when they read what you've written about them? I'll tell you a story about that, actually. It's always very risky writing about restaurants because they come and go. There are some wonderful ones like the Fuchsias in Sam Vast, which will be there forever. It'll be there long after we're all dead and rotten, and it was there before we were born. It's a proper job and reliable. But not all of them are like that. And there was one restaurant that Johnny Coote, that great bon viveur, recommended, and I took it on for my first edition and told everybody this was the place to go. And I'd never been there myself, but I just believed what Johnny told me. And I got a letter about a year after the book had been published, and it said, Cunliffe, I've been into the port in question, and my crew and I walked 2 miles in the pouring rain to get to the restaurant you recommended, only to find that Chez Jacques has been boarded up for 2 years, and that Jacques is currently doing time in prison for having poisoned his customers. So, you know, it's very dangerous recommending restaurants if you haven't been there yourself. You've got to go yourself, and even if you do, you don't even know that it's still there, because very likely the guy's sold up and moved on, or, as in the case of Jacques, been arrested. So the question was, how do they react? Well, it would be nice to think, wouldn't it, that we're all going to get free meals and that they're going to say, "Oh, Monsieur Cunliffe, you have been very kind. Come in and have the run of the town, and then this is my family who will eat with you." Well, I didn't like that, I'm afraid. But it's nice to be recognised, and very often there are one or two restaurants where they do recognise me, and they know I've written well of them, and they always usher me into a good table and make sure I get a good wine that I'll enjoy, and they treat me well, and they greet me like a long-lost cousin, and then they give me the bill. Well, you know, you can't take a joke, you shouldn't sign on, should you? But it's very nice to do. You've got to be very careful about accepting freebies when you do this sort of work, for obvious reasons. You know, you accept a free meal, you've got to say something nice about the restaurant, and if you've had a rotten oyster, it puts you in a bad position. So here we go. So let's have some more questions. What have we got? Just arrived. Hi, Tom. Took longer to get to this working than figuring out a second report. Yes, quite so. Well, I'm glad you got there in the end anyway. I know how you feel. Now David White says, we're thinking of going to the Channel Islands for the first time. Where would you recommend as the first stop? If you're coming across from the south coast of England, I would be inclined myself to go either to Cherbourg or Alderney if you've got a few days to spare, because they're both all-tide harbours, you've got no problem with them, and both of them are within an easy one-tide hop of Guernsey. It's very easy going from Cherbourg, because you simply step out onto the tide, you climb onto an inshore eddy which carries you down to Cap de la Hague, and then you've got all the tide you can ever want to go down through the race of Alderney to Guernsey, which is a good place to stop for a day or two and gather your wits. Alderney's great. I mean, it's a wonderful place to stop. There's no marina at the moment, but you can pick up a buoy and you'll have to dinghy in, or there's a water taxi, which works reasonably well. It's not always the quietest berth in Alderney. If the wind's strong and there's a big sea running outside, it'll come around the end of the breakwater and you'll rock about a bit. If it's blowing from the east or the northeast, don't even think about going there. I did it once during a TV show with my big pilot cutter, and we had to be there because all the crew were there and it was all set up. I said, I'm not sleeping on there tonight, you'll have to sort something out. Well, the people in Alderney very kindly put us on the lifeboat mooring. We ended up on about a 30-40 foot scope with a massive great cable holding us onto this mooring, and I was looking at the boat from the shore, and she was going bows under in the swell. It was just horrible and unthinkable, so don't be there in that sort of weather. But it's a lovely place, and it's a good place to step off into the race, or to go down through the Swinge, depending on which way the tide's going, to take you down further into Guernsey. So yeah, those would be my recommendations. What we got here? Mike White says, what's the trickiest entrance in your view? Blimey, Mike, I've got to think about that. Yeah, it used to be West Bay, in Lyme Bay, the little port that leads up to Bridport. It used to be a shocker, that did. It was absolutely terrifying. They've improved it a lot now, so it's not too bad. I mean, you don't want to go there with an onshore wind, but if the wind's offshore, you know, you could do worse. So that's gone. Where else is awful? A lot of places are perfectly okay in the right weather, but just dire in the wrong weather. Polperro, don't go in there if the wind's blowing on shore. You'd surf in through the entrance and have to do a handbrake turn and hope there was nobody on the wall, and if there was, God help you. You know, so that wouldn't be a great idea. But if the wind's blowing offshore and it's not too strong, it's just delightful, wonderful thing if you don't mind taking the ground. More bad entrances. It's nearly invariably depends on the weather. You know, I mean, Bewley's dead easy. I like going to Bewley. I kept my boat there for 25 years, and it's the most beautiful place, and never a problem getting in. There's 2 hours either side of low water, any boat can get in, and a lot from the time at Neeps you can get in with a 6 foot draft at low water. But I once went in there with my pilot cutter with 8 foot draft, and it was blowing really, really, guys, force 10 from the southwest, and we ran up there in staysail, under staysail only. I got the staysail down, started the little engine, and I went in through the entrance, loads of water up top of the tide, and there was great breakers coming in across the sedge, and I tried to turn up towards the wind to go in down to the west as the first pitch of the river goes to the westward. It's running straight into the wind. She wouldn't meet the wind. She just didn't have enough power in that little engine to get her into the wind, and I was looking at destruction because the stones and the groins were in front of me. So I jibed her round, as it were, under power, and went back out again and went to cows. So that was a horribly dangerous entrance on that day, but 99 days out of 100, it's an absolute pussycat. Lovely. And when you get inside, a bit special. Who's the... Right, what does Rod Heitel say? The inevitable question. Favourite harbour, Anchorage, South Coast and France. Righto, Rod. I bet you've got a few of these of your own. I'm going to surprise you all here. My favourite harbour in France is Dawet, which is tucked away when you come... My goodness! I think we're in business again. Yeah. Well, I'm on here. I'm walking back up to my study. I can't see any response from it. Oh, here comes one person. We got one person on, so it could be that we're getting back in some sort of sense. Let's get in the sunshine. Two people. Hooray. 4 people. That's no good. Here we go. You can see me. Good show. Hi Tom, Jess from, currently working through my day skipper. Any tips on passage planning? Blimey, you don't want much, Jess. I could write a book about that. In fact, I have. Passage planning. What do you do? Well, start by getting yourself a paper chart, Jess. I'm going back up to my study so we can get some decent light here, guys. Jess, passage planning. Don't even be tempted to think you're going to be able to do this on a modern chart plotter. You're not. You've got to do it on a paper chart. That's the only tip I can give you right now. I could go on about it for hours, but we'll try with that, eh? Get yourself a paper chart, then you won't be let down. Okay, anything else? No, we haven't, not yet. The people are just gathering. 15 of us now. I'm really sorry about that, guys. I do not know what happened. I've been having meetings on my iPad in this very chair all week, and some of them have gone on for an hour and a half, and there's been no problem at all. So I don't know, I think it's probably something to do with Facebook. None of the meetings were on Facebook. They're all on things like Zoom and FaceTime. So no problems there. Okay, well, there we are. The thing's sort of broken down a bit. Jess got one. Thank you. Well done, Jess. Glad you got a chart. Get an Imray one. You won't be sorry. Oh, Lucy Wilson's appeared. Good show. That's right. I mentioned Willie Wilson, who was in charge when I was setting the whole thing up. Well, Willie is Lucy's dad, and he's one of the great men of British nautical publishing, a proper gentleman publisher. And Lucy's now stepped into his shoes. And isn't it great that the people who produce our charts are a family firm? And you know, they go back generations. The whole thing goes back 200 years. In fact, if you want to know about it, Google Tom Cunliffe Imray on YouTube, and there's a whole 20-minute programme about it. Right, Matthew Keithley's going to give it 2 minutes, and everyone will join back into the event. Oh, that's nice. Thanks, Matthew. That's good to know. It's a mystery. I can't believe I'm doing this on my phone, but I am. I got that lovely big fat iPad screen and it didn't work. Must have been the iPad, mustn't it? If you guys are managing all right. Getting back to Jess and the pen. Right, we're back. I think what's happening is all the kids in the whole of our village, which is a small village in the New Forest, must be online doing their homework, and they've used up all the bandwidth, because I never ever have this sort of problem. So I'm going to move my wife from her desk. Come on, Ross, shove off. There she goes. and we'll take over from here. I like this because this is a sort of halfway decent lit place to talk from. Right, yeah, sorry Jess, I did go away, but I think I'm now sitting right next to the router. So if there's any doubt at all, it's not me, it's what's coming into the house. Lucinda Heichel says, "Oh, Lou," says, "Hi Ros." Well, she's gone now, Lou. She's gone off to the kitchen. I think she's going to brew us a cup of tea, which we richly deserve after all this. Yeah, John Hemingway says, "Any tips on reversing long keel boats?" Yes. Most of, yeah, sorry, thank you very much. That's my wife has just offered a comment from the stairs where she's now sitting working, and she said, "Get yourself a bow thruster." Not helpful, Ross. Thank you very much. Now, what you do, John, what I've found is that most boats, not all, but most boats have a habit. They do what they want to do, and generally it's predictable. There are a few out there that just aren't. A Nicholson 32 and I think it's a Twister. I've tried to work out what they do and I just can't. I can't ever decide what they're going to do. They've got a mind of their own. But most boats that have got a long keel will do one thing or the other. The thing is, if your boat has a natural tendency to put her stern to port as she goes astern, if there's no wind, you can generally beat that, because before you go astern, give her a good kick ahead and throw the bow across to port. Then when you put her astern, she's got a fair way to go before she gets back into line, and by the time she gets back into line, with a bit of luck, you'll be doing 2 knots. And most boats will steer astern at 2 knots. You need to get up to 2.5 knots, and then you're in with a chance. But at low speed, you get absolutely nothing. And I'm very sympathetic because I've suffered this half my life. The first thing, give her a bit of a send one way or the other, the way she wants to go, to help her. Don't try and fight her, because you'll never win. The other thing is, watch out for the wind. If the wind's on the bow and it's blowing the bow the way it tends to go when you go astern and you don't want it to, well, you've had it, mate. Your best bet is to either do it with ropes or wait till tomorrow. But if the wind's on the other bow, so that when you go astern, perhaps the bow tends to go to starboard, and the wind's on your starboard bow, you'll probably find it's all right. And if you've got a long keel and you've got to go astern, look where the wind is, and if it's coming from behind you, most boats weathercock, and that'll help you a lot. If you've got a good strong wind from behind you and you go astern, you'll find it's a lot easier. If it's coming from ahead of you, you've probably got no chance at all. And there you go. Julian Cox is backing this up. He's got a Nick 32 and he says she's a dog going astern. Yeah, but you know, Julian, she wasn't ever made to go astern, was she? She was meant to cross oceans in a lovely, easy stride with a beautiful motion. There's a price to pay for everything, isn't there? Geez, lost sound now. Well, I don't know about that. I've got plenty of sound here. I think we're all right, really. What have we got? Somebody's asking if the event's still live. I haven't got very many things because I'm on my phone here, so don't know. Here's John Hemingway. He's given us a thumbs up, so he can hear us, so that's all right. Right, we need some more questions, which we haven't got. I'll get back to... what we got? Yeah, I'll get back to Rod Heichel, who was asking for a favourite port on the south coast. I gave you one on the... I was giving you one on the Breton coast when I was cut off most rudely, and I was recommending Dowet, which is down to the west, and it's just a lovely, lovely little harbour. You go in, there's a real jink in there. You look at it from seaward and you think, well, I can't get in there. There's no way in. It looks like wall-to-wall rocks. But it's not. It's actually quite easy. You just read the pilot book notes and follow it in, and it's okay. And when you get inside, you'll be greeted by 2 charming harbour masters who will lead you over the sill, because you've got to do it at high water, take you over the sill into this lovely little marina. The water goes away, and you walk round to the town afterwards, where there's 2 or 3 delightful little bistros on the waterfront. Not expensive, just simple, nice places where French families are eating. And you look to seaward and you can't see the sea. All you see is a big pile of rocks, and that's what you come in through. So I like that. That's a good spot. As for the oh well, David Gore said, have you seen the improvements at Buckler's Hard? it's gone. Can I pull it down? Yeah, I can. Will they be finished when they ever get this season back into action? David, I'm not sure. I've got to go down to Bewley in a couple of weeks about something else. I was going to say that actually, for what it's worth, Bewley's probably my favourite port on the south coast. It's been home to me for 25 years. I keep my boat in Scandinavia at the moment, but that's a relatively recent thing. It's always felt like family at Bewley. I've been well looked after. People have been kind. And the river is just beautiful. It's a lovely, lovely place. So, yeah, recommend Bewley. Matt Keithley says, you're leaving the Solent, you've got 7 days to fill. Where do you go? Depends on the weather, Matthew. I keep giving this answer, don't I? I keep saying it depends on the weather, and it does. Everything depends on the weather. If the wind was blowing hard from the southwest, I'd be disinclined to go to France. I'd probably, what would I do? It's not that much east of the Solent that I really fancy. I might go across to Le Havre, make it a beam breach, go across to Le Havre and then go to Honfleur. That'd be nice. If it wasn't high season, it gets a bit busy in there at high season, but if it's, you know, the right time of the year, it's not too bad. So that would be lovely. Yeah, I think I'd do that. If it's blowing from the east, straight across to Cherbourg. I love Cherbourg. It's such a nice place, you know. It's so full of interesting shops and whatnot. So so there to call. The questions are piling in from now, and well, that's it. That's half an answer. What's this now? Wait a minute. There's another. Your favourite place to take a gaffer into? Probably Honfleur, Michael, because in Honfleur I have lain alongside in the plumb berth right under the lieutenants there for no money. The harbour master loves gaffers, and I've never been charged in Honfleur. Actually, I've never been charged in Dowet either with a gaffer. I get charged in my modern boat. There's not much sympathy for her, but they're always very kind to the gaffer. The French love gaffers. Have you noticed that? We get no deal here, do we? You turn up. How long are you? Well, I'm 32 feet, governor. Yeah, what about that bowsprit? Well, yeah, okay, 39 feet with the bowsprit. But I can't live in the bowsprit, can I? How about just charging me for the bit I can live with? Not a chance, mate. Stump up. In France, there's no talk about bowsprits. They're kind to you. They do the best they can. And it is surprising, really. You'd think the Brits would be onto it, but they're not. Anyway, there it is. So what have we got here? Ah, John Rhodes. Yeah, my pal John Rhodes. He says, my shipmate, he says he's got his boat at Buckler's Heart at the moment, and the new marine is excellent. So that's the answer. It's done. Great news. Great news. Andrew Craig Bennett says, where would you recommend in Cornwall for a boat that draws 2.7 metres and doesn't care to go astern? Well, Herta, my big boat, drew 2.8 metres, and I never had any problems in Falmouth and the River Fal. Moorings in there, pick up a mooring, or anchor in front of the chain locker. It's a bit tight these days, like most places where there's decent anchorage. They've crammed in on you slowly with the moorings and the bric-a-brac marinas and things, so that you haven't got much room to anchor as you used to have, but it is what it is. And if you go up the river there, you've got all the room you could ever want. It's absolutely lovely, and you can anchor anywhere, and they charge you peanuts, really. Anchoring's great, you know, down in the West Country with 2.7 metres, round the back at Didisham, go right round the corner and tuck in there, and it's great in there. Sometimes the harbour master doesn't even see you, so you don't get charged. So yeah, I think that's it. 2.7 metres is always interesting, but yeah, look for places to anchor, and there's plenty of them. What have we got? Jess Clay says, have I seen Pellew yet, Tom? No, I haven't. No, I'm looking forward to that. I'm sure Luke's done a fantastic job, and very, very exciting project. That's going to be great. Pellew is a really big gaff cutter that's being built by Luke Powell down in the West Country, and she's a replica, the best they can manage, and probably a very good one, of a Scilly's Isle of Scilly's pilot cutter. They had very big pilot cutters in the Isles of Scilly. They were bigger than the Bristol Channel boats and a lot of the other pilot cutters, the Le Havre pilot cutters, because they used to pile the guys on. They used to get quite a lot of guys on. They'd go out together. They didn't own their own boats specifically. I think they had some sort of, I'm not sure how they did it, but anyway, Luke will tell you. Oh God, Sean Bento says, what's my favourite spot in Greece? Well, that's a funny question to ask the Shell Channel pilot. I like Simi. I like it in Simmy, and I like that mooring man who's always there shouting, and he always takes your lines, and he looks absolutely frightening, but he's all right when you get there. And there's lots of nice places to eat, and it's very beautiful. So there you go. That's a recommendation for Scilly. Dick Holnett says, it's beyond me you managed to maintain a big detailed book like the Shell Pilot so frequently. Dick Holness does the East Coast Pilot for the East Coast rivers, like the Shell Pilot, actually, when you're actually sailing in the Baltic. Well, good question, Dick, and the answer is that the plan this year was to get up there at the beginning of May, sail the boat down to Ramsgate, and then spend 3 or 4 months cruising in the Channel and bringing the book right up to date, doing the best we could to bring her up to date, and then sailing her back up to Denmark to lay up. That's how we do it. I mean, when I'm on the boat in the summer, I work. We keep doing whatever it is we're doing. We write our columns, and Ros takes loads of photographs, and we generally charge our batteries up so that we're ready to go next year. But this year was going to be a particularly hard-working summer, largely dedicated to the Shell Pilot. I've been getting lots of columns up front and everything so that I could really just get on with it. It's only about a week down from the Baltic, so it wouldn't take that much time out, really. So that's how we do it, Dick. I hope that's helpful. What have we got here? Jess Clay says she's a Falmouth pilot, I think. Well, I wouldn't argue with that, if you say so. The Falmouth pilots' boats were also bigger gaff cutters than most of the other pilot cutters that were around. So she could well be, if you say so. Michael Lithgow says, I have a 34-foot fin keel. Would you recommend the westerly route across the Bay of Biscay? I think they recommend 10 degrees west. Yes, now then, Michael, this is a good question. The question is, guys, for those of you who aren't au fait with all this, if you're crossing the Bay of Biscay from the English Channel to get down to the corner of Spain, to Finisterre, the problem, of course, is southwest winds and getting stuffed and getting pushed into the Bay of Biscay, which is not what you want and is a misery. The old pilot books used to recommend going out to 10 or 15 degrees west before you turned to port, and then you were in with a reasonable chance of laying Finisterre in a square rigger. These days, Michael, things are different. Your boat will eat the wind out of a square rigger in anything less than 4-6, and you're obviously going to pick your weather to start off, so you shouldn't get too bad a hammering. My favoured policy, really, these days has been to, with modern boats, has been to get myself down to Camaret, at the bottom end of the Canal du Fort, just north of the Raz de Seine, on the corner of France. Monitor the weather very carefully. Make sure my fuel tanks are full in case it's calm. Get stocked up and psyched up. And then when I see the gap and I can do for it, just go for it. And it's not that far. It's what is it, 450 miles or something like 400 miles. You cross there in no time. And then once you get to the corner, I like to pop into Camarinas and just anchor and have a nice dinner. Think about the fact that I've cracked it, because when you step out from there, there's every chance you'll have northerners, the northern Portuguese trades that will carry you onwards to a life of lotus eating. Dick Holness says, buy the East Coast Pilot from Imray. Yeah, good idea, and Alan Brown's got it, so good for you, lads. Absolutely. David Gore says, what's the attraction of Denmark? The attraction of Denmark is, David, that funnily enough, keeping the boat there is not expensive. The Scandinavian countries have a reputation for being expensive, and they can be if you choose to eat out and buy booze and stuff like that. But if you make sure you're well equipped with that sort of thing before you turn up, it's not so bad. And the actual cost of berthing is lower, much lower than it is here. So I keep my boat in a heated shed all winter long. I just walk away at the end of my sailing season, which, as I say, is 4 months long, and I get on the boat, I live on board, and I have great sailing for all that time. When I've finished, we pull the boat out, take the mast out, and put her in the shed. And the shed is heated. It's 12 degrees C, never less. And the boat is just so well looked after. It's just beautiful, and it doesn't cost me much more than a patch of damp gravel in the rain on the Hamble River. So really, you know, it makes a lot of sense to me. I love sailing in the Baltic. The Baltic Sea is, you know, for an old fellow like me, I've done my time walloping around in the North Atlantic, and it's very nice to sail in fresh water. There are so many ports to go to, and once you get into Sweden, north round the corner or up the west coast. It is wall-to-wall islands, so you're sailing in flat water. You leave when you want. There's no tide to worry about. It's got a lot going for it. They're beautiful places, lovely people, and Ros and I really enjoy it. And if we're really feeling adventurous, it's not so far to nip up round Lindesnes, and we're away up the west coast of Norway, all the way to Lofoten on the Arctic Circle. And we don't have to hack all the way up the Channel to Dover and then bash up the North Sea across the Dogger Bank anymore. So, yeah, I quite like it. And if I need to work in England, I just sail back. It's only a week, not far. That's the attraction of Denmark. Michael Lithgow, we've talked to Michael. What have we got now? Right, Neil Eccles is watching. But I'm just scrolling through these questions. It's Juan Bento, who's very voluble today, and he's doing the questions. Good for you, Juan. Juan, I'm sorry. Will you enter in Ocean Globe Race 2023 at Whitbread style? No, I won't, Juan. I'm finished with racing. I'm not doing it anymore. I used to get paid for it years ago, and I sometimes wonder what I was doing out there. No, I won't be doing that anymore. No, but good question. I think it's a great thing. I'm all for the Golden Globe. I think it's a really good idea, and God bless the boys and girls who do it. Dean Winsbury says, if you had to buy a plastic boat, what would you likely choose? Well, Dean, I've got one. I sold my last wooden boat 10 years ago, and I went to America and I bought myself a Mason 44 in Florida. It's a wonderful boat. It's got a long keel. It looks a bit like a folk boat out of the water. Beautiful motion. The motion is just glorious. It sails okay. It's not a ball of fire, but it's quite acceptable. It's a long keel, and going astern, as we've already discussed this afternoon, is a bit of... But it's not, because I got a bow thruster. A previous owner thoughtfully awarded me with a bow thruster, and I enjoy that. That's great. So there's some lovely boats in America. There really are. It's a bit of a grief getting them in here. You have to pay VAT when you get here. I don't know what's going to happen about the Recreational Craft Directive once we're free from Europe. It cost me £7,000 to get the boat approved for that, and really I might as well have stood on the end of the dock and torn up the £10 notes for all the good it did me. But I'm sure somebody in Brussels was happy about it, so you know, if it makes you pleased, I suppose it's all right. It didn't please me. Paying the VAT was fair enough. That's what you do when you bring a boat into this country. And the boat itself was, I think, considerably less money than such a boat would have been here. So all in all, it was good. I love that boat, and I'm keeping her. And I'd be inclined to go and have a look around in America. Otherwise, well, you'd be all right with the Nick 35. That would be a fine boat to go cruising in. If you wanted a middle-sized boat. Nicholson 32, fantastic value. Contessa 32, if you want to go upwind really fast and you don't mind getting a bit wet and you've got a beautiful boat, there's another one. Long Fin, a great heavy weather boat. All these boats that I'm talking about are great heavy weather boats. They're boats to be out in storm conditions in if you really have to be, rather than some of the others that are on offer that have perhaps got more room and seem more tempting and perhaps sail a little bit better in good weather. So if what you want to do is sail across the channel quick on a summer's day and have lots of room when you get there and enjoy the performance, well, buy a nice modern boat with a fin keel and a spade rudder. You see, it depends on what you want to do. The trick is to define your objectives. What have we got down here? How do you think Brexit will affect all our sailing? I don't know, Neil, really. Politics is not my thing. My father was a judge, and I once asked him which way he voted, and he said, I have no politics. He said, I'm not allowed to have any politics. What I think privately is up to me, but I can't offer an opinion. So I won't offer an opinion either way about what I think about Brexit. What I think it'll do about our sailing, the person really to talk to is the RWA. Talk to Carruthers at the RWA. He's the man who knows all about this rather than me. I just hang on his coattails really and ask what he thinks. And he's Stuart Carruthers, absolutely brilliant. But for somebody like me who keeps his boat outside Britain and in the EU, it's going to be a bit tricky because the boat will be fine. She will be in the Union when we come out, and she can stay there as long as she likes, no problem at all. If I bring her back here, theoretically I'd have to pay VAT, but I've already paid VAT, and I think that something will be arranged. I think the RWA have got that in hand, so that's not going to be a problem. But What might be a problem is how long I personally and Ros are allowed to stay in the EU at any one time, and it might be that they'll only give us 90 days out of 180, which could leave us a little bit shy. That might be a problem. I don't know how we'll deal with that. We'll have to wait and see, really, and work it. I think as far as just going over to France or just to Holland or something, you know, just a quick trip, we'll probably have to fill in customs forms like we all did years ago. No big problem, really. When you get back, you post it in the box, and that's that. Yep. Matthew Keithley, I think it's Keithley, says you sound like you like a good restaurant. I do, Michael. What's your favourite dish? Well, if I'm feeling adventurous, I really like going in a Breton restaurant and having a full-on seafood platter, you know, the expensive one, the one you stump up big bucks for, and a really decent bottle of Burgundy with it, none of this cheapo white, and really push the boat out and love it. The only thing is, I did that once before doing the Biscay crossing that we were talking about, and poor Ros, she had one dodgy prawn, she reckoned, and she was pretty sick as we left Camargue. As soon as we hit the sea in the Ras de Seine, she got a bit poorly. When she was off, watched right until, and she's not a quitter, this girl. She served up meals for 3 all the way across, meals for 8 all the way across the North Atlantic in a big boat in storm weather in the North Atlantic. She never gives up, but the seasickness just was ruinous. And it was food poisoning, really. It wasn't seasickness at all. And me and my mate Chris Stewart had to sail the boat by ourselves. We didn't mind that. We had a good time, really. But we had to look after Ros, and it was because she had the seafood platter. It's unusual. I've never had a bad experience with it myself, but it didn't work out for her. But that's what I'd go for. Yeah, definitely. Take your chance. Be a sportsman. Matthew says, is there anywhere you haven't sailed to that you'd still want to visit? That's always a difficult question. You know, people ask you this, and it's an awkward question to answer. I love the Northlands. I've been to Greenland. That was somewhere I always wanted to go. I tried to go there in 1982, 83, and got beaten back by the ice. I went there about 5 or 6 years ago and had a wonderful trip. Wouldn't have missed it for the world. It's a different world up there now, so that was okay. I've been to the Lofoten Islands, so that was okay. The problem now is that a lot of the places I would like to have gone that haven't gone are getting full of cruise ships. Cruise ships are arriving. There's a lot more yachts, and the sheer feeling of isolation, which I love, is disappearing. I think in a way I've had the best of it. No, I think I'm sort of okay, really. I'm not complacent, but I'm pretty satisfied with the places we've been, and I'm okay with that, Matthew. John Rhodes says, oh God, I've lost him. Here we go. John Rhodes says, if you could take one piece of equipment on a voyage, what would it be? What luxury would you take? If it was a long voyage, I'd take a really good wind vane self-steering, John. Ros once said to me, do you know, our wind vane self-steering is so good, I'd rather go without the cooker than go without that. And I think she's right, because you don't want to be steering, do you? It's the last thing you want to be doing. So, yeah, a really good wind vane self-steering. I have an electronic autopilot now, because I'm not going far. I'm only going up to Scandinavia and back. But if I was off around the world or off across the Atlantic, wind vane self-steering, every time. Your favourite place to go in Norfolk and Suffolk, why? Alan Brown wants to know this. I've recently visited Southwold, and I like Southwold. It's got a sort of outpost feel to it when you come into the harbour. It does feel a bit of an adventure, and when you get in there, it's not a sort of standard place with an ordinary marina with lots of berths that you get paid, have to charge paid a fortune to get into. It's not like that at all. So I think probably Southwold, but what else? I mean, I love the Walton backwaters too. I like to anchor in there. I think that might be one of my favourites. I get round the back. I don't turn to port to go to the marina. I go on straight on up, and I don't know what it's called because I'm not an East Coast man, but there's a place around the back there that I've had some lovely times anchoring, and nobody seems to disturb me. Unfortunately, last time I went, somebody had stuck a mooring right in the middle. Why do people do this? I hate moorings, you know. They keep cluttering up anchorages. I had some wonderful times in the Gulf of Morbihan in the 1980s, and I went there again fairly recently, and all the anchorages were full of moorings. So you either had to pick up some dodgy mooring laid by some guy who you've never met and you don't know anything about, and it might be good or it might not, and anyway, there might be somebody's mooring, or you're stuck. I don't like moorings. I'd far rather anchor. I feel much safer lying to my own ground tackle. So there you go. Sorry, Alan, that was a long answer. Nick 55, remember running one aground, visiting the Orkneys, left hand driver, 6 hours. I bet that's a good yarn, Michael. Yeah, very embarrassing. But it's a good, strong boat. I don't expect there was very much damage. But it'd be uncomfortable with that deep draft and relatively narrow beam. You'd be an awful long way over. I wonder if she lifted up okay. Well, obviously she did. Or you'd have said you left one in the Orkneys, which clearly you didn't. What a great boat, the Nick 55. One of the greatest. Unstoppable. Fabulous boat. Neil Eccles says only 90 years. Only 90 days a year, though. Well, you know, yeah, that might be a problem. Problem for the likes of me, but, you know, because although I'm not retired, I'm working from my boat. You know, so I sort of look like a retired person, but I'm, believe me, I'm not. So, yeah. Yeah, Jean Bento says Trintella or Victory from Tyler are amazing too. Yeah, you're right, Jean, they are. I'm particularly fond of the Trintella. It's a lovely boat, that, and very good. Well, Andrew Craig Bennett says, which one? I have an interest in the answer. I don't know really, Andrew. I think you've got to go on board and see which one suits you best. It's always the way when you're buying a boat. Really, what you've got to do, you've got to get on board it, see how you feel about it, and then take it for a sail. And try and take it for a sail when it's windy and see what she's like. Or take it for a sail when there's practically no wind at all and see if she's a bit of a dog. What you really want is both, if you can, but that can't always be arranged. But you really must sail the boat and see how it is. And go on board and spend some time. And if you've got a partner, take your partner with you as well, because everybody's got to like it. Now, what's this? There's a message come up here and it says, what's this? I'm just going to press the button. It says, has your excellent humour in Shelf ever been censored? Well, good question here. Has your humour in Shell Channel Pilot ever been censored? No, it hasn't. It hasn't. And all credit to Imray's. They write it up there, and when I'm telling somebody that the landlord at the Throttled Ferret somewhere or other is not a nice man, they publish it and be damned. And quite right too. And I think this is what we have to do. You've got to say how you feel. It's no good me just being nice about everybody, because not everything in the world is perfect, is it? And I think if people pay the sort of money you pay for a pilot book, money well spent, really, you deserve to get what I really think, and I think that's what you're paying for. You're being paid for my opinion, for what it's worth, and I have knocked around a bit, so, well, you know, there you go. Steve Cottrell says, being tall can be awkward on any boat. How right he is. How do you cope with that? Well, shipmates, I'm here to tell you, I'm 6 feet 6 inches tall in my stocking feet, and I've spent 15 years of my life actually living on wooden sailing boats, and none of those boats, oh yeah, one of them did. Yeah, one of them did. One of them had full standing headroom. The others have had maybe headroom between the deck beams or something like that. And one of them, the first boat I had, which I had for 5 years when I was a young man in my 20s, she had no headroom at all. To get into you, I had to duck up a deck beam that was 4 foot 6 inches above the cabin cell. When you were inside, underneath the main skylight, you could stand up, and there was 5 foot 8 inches under there. The rest of it had about 5 foot 4. I lived on that boat with no other home for 5 years, and I sailed the seas in her. We crossed the Atlantic in her several times, and we did everything with her. And I didn't care. And it was quite right that I didn't care, because she was beautiful. And she did what I wanted it to do. She did what I wanted her to do. And she looked after me when many a boat with a lot more headroom wouldn't have done. I loved it. So that was great. Now listen, folks, because my iPad crapped out, and I really don't know why, my iPhone is now running out of juice, because they don't last forever. So I'm going to have to sign off. But I just want to thank you all for coming. We've had a good afternoon. We've had a bit of fun, haven't we? And it's been great. So thanks to Imray for putting it on. Thanks to you for coming. And thanks to Ros for her shrewd comment about the bow thruster. Okay then, well, I'll see you out on the water one of these days. And, well, as Tiny Tim said, God bless us all.